step back from what you were taught as a kid sometimes. But self-love in itself, well, let's talk about just love for a second. It's my belief, anyway, that you don't create love. Love is a part of who you are and a part of the universe. And what you do is you allow it. So you allow it to flow through you. It's actually almost like a vibration or an energy that is throughout the universe, and it's a part of everything. The absence of love is fear, obviously, but I think it's something that it's really about opening up the valve and letting it flow. And that's true of yourself. So with self-love, there's a few areas I'll start to talk about. One's the physical, the psychological, and emotional, and the spiritual. So obviously, physically, you are a reflection of your soul. You are a symbol. You are a pattern of your mind and your soul, and it's reflected in the way you look, feel, and carry yourself through this world. So I think that's important. People have obviously challenges, physically and otherwise, but it's always helpful to keep in mind that you do have certain controls over what happens with your body. You may not have total control in a sense, but you do have certain controls. So it's about really taking care of yourself. Self-love is about taking care of yourself physically, eating correctly, exercise, air, and I hate to say it, elimination. You have to get rid of the bad, okay? It's just a part of the process. Sorry I didn't mention that. So anyway, but that is the cycle. Okay? So, and then the psychological is more the emotional and the mental. And this is something that probably is the most challenging for a lot of us. For example, like what words do you use about yourself? Really, really important. You hear so many people say, "Oh, I'm so stupid," or I can't do this right," and really putting themselves down in words, and it's really, it really affects the way you feel about yourself, because if you keep telling yourself that's exactly what you're going to be. So it's really important to keep in mind the words that we use about ourselves, and not to take our words lightly. Oh, it doesn't really matter. It matters. It really does. So it's very simple, but you're constantly telling your own image of yourself, especially on a subconscious level, of what you are. And what you are becomes. So it's really important to keep that in mind when you're referring to yourself. Be nice to yourself. And then from the spiritual, it's also helpful to have some type of a practice, something that you do on a regular basis that allows you to feel your connection to spirit. That you're a part of it and it's a part of you. And by doing that and understanding that, it's easier to have self-love, because you're part of something. You're a piece of something a lot bigger than yourself as well. So, like for example, I don't want to get too extreme, but I will. So, if Jesus was here and Buddha was here, are they really better than you are? Not really. They're just different than you are, and that's your gift, is that you're different and unique. So, I think we have a perception that even though we're spiritual, it's something external to us. And even when we pray, we have a tendency to pray externally, when in reality we should really be praying internally, for what's already here. So I think those are some things. And also just to be, and take time for yourself and just to be alone a little bit with your own thoughts. I think it's really important. Just not to do anything, and just to have some time to allow thoughts and ideas go through your mind. I think it's important for me, and I go a little crazy if I don't have time to do that. So, so anyway, I would say that there's a couple of key other points I want to emphasize, and that's compassion. You know, it's interesting how some people will see another person and will have such compassion for them, or see an animal and they'll be so compassionate and they're so hard on themselves. You know, why can't you just have the same compassion you have for someone else, for yourself? You know, we have a tendency to judge ourselves pretty harshly at times. And I think a lot of these judgments come from when we were kids, you know, whether we were told what we were going to be and how we weren't good, or those types of things. And I think what happens is, over time as a kid, we start to believe them, because sometimes they're by the people who are supposed to love us the most, like our parents, or maybe it's teachers, or whoever it may be. But it's really a matter of getting over this. So in order to really increase your self-love, you really have to do some cleaning. You really do. Not all of us are in that position, but a lot of us are. So it's important to kind of take the trash out to the street, because what happens is that the words that people have told you over time, when you're a kid, they become your own words, and then you use those own words and thoughts about yourself. But in the reality, they were never true to begin with. And then we go and we take them on as our own truth, and then it blocks us from our own appreciation of ourselves. And again, it's appreciation of ourselves is something that's so important, because we, again, I say this quite a bit, but our uniqueness is our biggest gift. You know, we want so often to try to, sometimes to fit in or be a part of something, but the truth is that we are who we are, and that's first and foremost, from a spiritual standpoint, the most important thing. We cannot be anybody else, and we shouldn't be anybody else, because we can't be anyone else, you know. So we try to fit in a lot, and it doesn't work, because it takes away our appreciation from ourselves. Now, you can fit in, but you can't alter the way you believe you are. Like, for example, do you look at yourself and appreciate your gifts, what's really, what you really do well? Or do you say, oh, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that? You know, those words, again, are very powerful. So if we can go and turn around and say, you know what, I'm really good at such and such. So for me, like, I'm really good at troubleshooting. So I'm a really good troubleshooter. That's what I do, you know. But I don't sit there and say, well, I wish I was a singer, because believe me, I'm not. That's for sure. Sorry, well, I get it. Like, so anyway, so I mean, you have to know your limits, right? So anyway, it's really important to really embrace what you do well, and it's a way of viewing yourself that, to me anyway, that you have compassion about who you are, and also about you give yourself a break. And this really gets into judgment, right? So this is probably the thing that blocks us the most in certain ways, is judgment, right? So we have a tendency to judge ourselves pretty harshly sometimes, and not fairly. And I don't want to get dark here, but I want to use an example that's going on, like, in the news. So last week we had two really famous people that took their own lives, right? Kate Spade, this designer who I'm not really familiar with, and Anthony Bourdain, who I just admire, and I don't admire famous people. That's not my thing at all. In fact, he's the only person I admired in television. So it was a sad week for me. I'm sorry that I found. But in his case, because I'll speak about him because I know about him, he was a humanist. He really just went around the world and connected people of all different types, and allowed, food was the vehicle. It wasn't about food. It was really about connecting with people and understanding them culturally, from a family dynamic, politically, and religiously as well. So it was all aspects of culture. And he he didn't go to the fanciest places, restaurants. He went to homes and back alleys and different types of things, and he talked to the common folk in all these areas. So he did amazing work as from a consciousness standpoint, because he really, for many of us, especially us Americans, we can be kind of closed off from the rest of the world. We just hear politically what's happening, but not necessarily cultural what's happening. So he was really special, and he was really amazing what he did. And he was the best storyteller on television, probably. So here's the thing, is that he was praised. I mean, he won tons and tons of awards. He wasn't being criticized by anyone, but yet he decided that he didn't want to go on any longer. And obviously he had judgment about himself. Now, it's an interesting thought, because when you look and you say, how could someone who's doing so well and all these other things actually dislike themselves that much, or think their life is so worthless, when everyone else around them saying, man, you're amazing. So it's not really about what you do, it's about the way you think about yourself that matters. And I thought it was a sad week for me. I'm not normally that way at all. So I was really sorry to see him go, but I thought it was interesting to use these two as an example, even though it's not happy news, but it is reality. And it's a good example to understand what self-love is, to understand self-love in the not, what it's not, okay? So, sometimes we have to look at the extremes on either side to understand what it is. Just like all the people that have gone through tough times and heartaches, and to have something beautiful come along, it wouldn't be that beautiful if you didn't go through all the other stuff, So it kind of all works hand in hand. But again, self-love is about perception of yourself. So I think, here's an example. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? When you look in the mirror, do you say, oh wow, look at that line, oh my God, my hair's getting all gray, it's receding, it's doing, or are you saying, well, you look pretty good for that. You're doing all right, I'm proud of you. What words do you use? Mirror work is one of the most powerful things you can do as far as a therapy for yourself. And I'm not conceited, but I make a habit, and I've done it for years now, that every time I'm in the bathroom, I say something positive in the mirror when I'm by myself about me. And I think that's one of the things that helped change my life, honestly. And it's so simple, it really is. And it helps you, because I was brought up by my dad, for example, who believed that he was a big sports freak, but he couldn't stand any athlete that was self-confident, or lack of a better term, cocky. So it drove him crazy. But he didn't understand that, yeah, people can go over the top of that, there's no question about it, but without them having the confidence in themselves, they would never be good. It goes hand in hand, and there's a balance there. So I was really brought up not to be that way whatsoever. So it took me a long time to kind of overcome that, and I think it was a powerful, step in the right direction for me, especially when I started doing mirror work. That really made a huge change for me. Very powerful. It also, I believe, if you tell yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself, you can't say something like, wow, you look 20 years old. It's not, no, come on, man. It's not gonna happen. It has to be believable, right? So, and you have to do it in steps. Sometimes you can't go from this position of being somewhat negative about something to really positive, because it's not believable. You have to move into more of a neutral position first, and then you can take the step to a more positive. So sometimes you have to do it in baby steps. I think another positive thing to do, as far as a technique for self-love, is to do it in meditation. Is to actually visualize, actually just releasing from your body, and then working with your body, being over your own body, and being compassionate towards yourself in meditation. You're actually having your spirit work with your physical body. And I think that can be very powerful as well. Because if you saw someone who was, say, you saw someone that was struggling, most of us in this room would just go up and give them a hug, right? But well, why can't you give yourself a hug? You know, really, and be compassionate towards yourself. I think that kind of begins the process of breaking down, and then you can kind of, it helps you out to then take the trash to the curb, you know? Because we've all been told a lot of things that weren't necessarily true or just completely false about ourselves. And over time we have to learn to say, no, these are their words. It doesn't make me who I am. So it's really by taking the steps to go forward, it allows you to see what it is for what it is. And when then you have the awareness of it, then you can dispose of it. So, but you have to take some positive steps in order to do that, I think. So it's really about being nice to yourself and giving yourself a little bit of a break. You know, we can be overly critical. So I think that's pretty much what I'm gonna leave it with that tonight. But I think it's really it's a process, you know, and certain people are in different levels of that process, you know, and then you may feel that you're in a certain level in that process, and something happens in life. But again, a lot of these things are so external, you know, and again, it's not about being the drama queen. It's about like seeing things for what they are and saying, well, this is something I don't like, but it doesn't really change me unless I let it change me. So you have to be in life and isolated from it to an extent. So I think it's good to go out and then work towards a goal. Set something for yourself that you can accomplish that isn't necessarily like climbing Mount Everest. It's something that's attainable, you know, and then build from there. So again, I think it's baby steps that helps get the ball rolling. You need some momentum, but self-love is really it's about, again, perception of yourself, and just being kind to yourself. Just treat yourself like you would someone else, and you'll be pretty well off. So thank you.
Thank you.